Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Giri Varadari Gopijana Vallabha Giri Varadari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnu Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtottara Shatashi Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Jayam Vishnu Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtottara Shatashi Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sikha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Dham Ki Jai Ganga Yamuna Mai Ki Jai Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Nu Govardhan Dham Ki Jai All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru, Sri Gauranga, all glories to Sri Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Fifth canto, entitled The Creative Impetus. Chapter 13, Rahugana converses with Jada. Text 23. Namo Mahadbhyo Stu Namaha Shishubhyo Namo Yuvabhyo Namah Avatubhya Ye Brahmana Gam Avaduta Lingash Charanti Tebhyaha Shivam Astu. ragyam. Namo mahadbhyostu namah shishobhyo. Namo yuvabhyo nama avatubhyaha. Ye brahmanagam avaduta lingash. Charanti tebhya shivam astu ragyam. Namo mahadbhyostu namah shishubhyo. Namo yuvabhyo nama avadubhyaha. Ye brahmanagam avaduta lingash. Charanti tebhya shivam astu ragyam. Namo mahadbhyostu namo shishubhyo. Namo yuvabhyo nama avadubhyaha. Ye brahmanagam avaduta lingash. Charanti tebhya shivam astu ragam. Namo. Excuse me. Okay.
Can I chant, Prabhu?
Yes, you can.
Thank you. Namo mahadbhyostu namastu shishubhyo. Nama yuvabhyo nama avatubhyaha. Ye brahmana gama avadhuta linga. Charanti tebhyaha shivamastu ragnyam. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Jai, Hare Krishna. Where's Rani and Shashvat? They're coming? No? Yeah. You need a chair, Tyler? There's a chair right there, over there, if you want one. All right. Namaha, all obeisances. Mahadbhyaha, unto the great personalities. Astu, let there be. Namaha, my obeisances. Shishubhyaha, unto those great personalities who appear as boys. Namaha, respectful obeisances. Yuvabhyaha, unto those who appear as young men. Namaha, respectful obeisances. Avatubhyaha, unto those who appear as children. Yea, all those who, Brahmanaha, self-realized in transcendental knowledge. Gam, the earth. Avadutalingaha, who remain hidden under different bodily guises. Charanti, they traverse. Tebhyaha, from them. Shivamastu, let there be all good fortune. Ragam, unto the royal dynasties of kings, who are always very puffed up. Translation commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the great personalities, whether they walk on the earth's surface as children, young boys, avadhuts, or great Brahmins. Even if they are hidden under different guises, I offer my respects to all of them. By their mercy, may there be good fortune in the royal dynasties that are always offending them. Purport. King Rahugana was very repentant because he had forced Jada to carry his Palanquin. He therefore began offering prayers to all kinds of Brahmins and self-realized persons, even though they might be playing like children or hiding in some guises. The 4 Kumaras walked everywhere in the guise of 5-year-old boys. And similarly, there are many Brahmins, knowers of Brahman, who traverse the globe either as young men, children, or avadhuts. Being puffed up due to their position, the royal dynasties generally offend these great personalities. Therefore, King Rahugana began to offer his respectful obeisances unto them, so that the offensive royal dynasties might not glide down into a hellish condition. If one offends a great personality, the Supreme Personality of Godhead does not excuse one, although the great personalities themselves might not take offense. Mahārāja Ambarīṣa was offended by Durvāsā, who even approached Lord Viṣṇu for pardon. Lord Viṣṇu would not grant him pardon. Therefore he had to fall down at the lotus feet of Mahārāja Ambarīṣa, even though Mahārāja Ambarīṣa was a Kshatriya Grihastha. One should be very careful not to offend the lotus feet of Vaishnavas and Brahmins. Jnanativedandasya Kananjana Shalakaya Chakshulanmalitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karidawachalam Pangam Langaite Gadimakripatamaham Vande Shri Gurun Dinitanam Vancha Kapadiribhishta Kripa Sindhubevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gauda Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the great personalities, whether they walk on the earth's surface as children, young boys, avadhuts, or great Brahmins. Even if they are hidden under different guises, I offer my respects to all of them. By their mercy, may there be good fortune in the royal dynasties that are always offending them. Ninth canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam is where Ambarīṣa Mahārāja and Durvāsā Muni, this particular incident is mentioned, of Durvāsā Muni offending Ambarīṣa Mahārāja. So Ambarīṣa Mahārāja, as Srila Prabhupada states in the purport that we just read, Kshatriya Grihastha, householder, palace holder. He was a great king, and he was a married person. So he was a king and a married person. And Durvāsā Muni was a very extremely powerful mystic yogi, who also, just like the other, just as Srila Prabhupada mentions here, the translation and purport of today mentions that a lot of the times the royal dynasties or the kings have a tendency to be puffed up, to be proud. Whereas Ambarīṣa Mahārāja is humble, but also the mystic yogis, they also have a tendency to be proud because of what they've achieved. So what I'll do is I'll read this particular verse. This is 9th Canto, Chapter 4, Text 20, 9-4-20. And this is describing Ambarīṣa Mahārāja, his particular absorption in Krishna. Savai mana Krishna padara vindayor vachamsi vaikunta gunanu varnane karau harir mandira marjanadishu shrutim chakar chuta satkatodaye bakunda lingalaya darshane darshau tadvritigatra sparshenga sangamam Granam chatat pada saroja sodabe Srimat tulasyara sanam tat arpate Padau harer chaitra padanu sarpane Shiro hari rishikesha padabi vandane Kamam chadase natu kama kamyaya Gito tamashloka janashayaratihi. Okay, this Mahārāja Ambarīṣa always engaged his mind in meditating upon the lotus feet of Krishna, his words in describing the glories of the Lord, his hands in cleansing the Lord's temple, and his ears in hearing the words spoken by Krishna or about Krishna. They say it was early in the Bhagavatam, it says that people who don't engage their ears and hearing kirtan and the messages of the Bhagavatam, they're like the holes of a, what is it? Snake or something like that? Anyways. Anyone remember that? Anyway. In other words, our ears are useless, not being used properly. So we have to hear. Spoken by Krishna or about Krishna. So spoken by Krishna, Bhagavad Gita, or about Krishna, Srimad Bhagavatam. He engaged his eyes in seeing the deity of Krishna, Krishna's temples and Krishna's places like Mathura and Vrindavan. He engaged his sense of touch in touching the bodies of the Lord's devotees. He engaged his sense of smell in smelling the fragrance of tulsi leaves offered to the Lord. And he engaged his tongue in tasting the Lord's prasad. He engaged his legs in walking to the holy places and temples of the Lord, his head in bowing down before the Lord, and all his desires in serving the Lord 24 hours a day. Indeed, Mahārāja Ambarīṣa never desired anything for his own sense gratification. He engaged all his senses in devotional service and various engagements related to the Lord. This is the way to increase attachment for the Lord and be completely free from all material desires. So Ambarīṣa Mahārāja was a pure devotee, and aside from being a pure devotee, he also followed the Vedic, you could say, culture very precisely. And therefore, when Durvāsā Muni, he arrived with his entourage, Mahārāja Ambarīṣa was ready to serve him prasadam with all of his disciples. But then Durvāsā Muni said, first let me go bathe the river, and then I'll come back, and then we could continue. So Ambarīṣa Mahārāja, at that particular point, he's been fasting. He was fasting, Kadashi actually. And it was the day where he was supposed to break the fast. But the time was coming where it was time to break his fast. So he was thinking, okay, well, what do I do? My guests are down at the river. Durvāsā Muni and all of his disciples are bathing. And as culture dictates that I feed my guests first, and then I'll take later after them. That's culture. Not like, hey, Somebody comes over to the house. Yeah, something's in the refrigerator, I think. Maybe, work it out yourself. Or here, I'll let us DoorDash something real quick, or DoorDash, right? Delivering food to people. If devotees have that job, they should get another job because, they're serving all types of meat, delivering meat to people and stuff, and there's other jobs out there. Anyways, so, but the culture, by culture, he wanted to wait, and that was his plan. He was going to do that. But it was time to break the fast, so what to do? So then he consulted the Brahmins. What do I do? And they didn't really know, actually. They weren't sure. So then Ambarīṣa Mahārāja, he decided that, okay, well, I'm going to drink some water. So he drank some water, which breaks the fast, but doesn't break the fast. It means it's water. He's not taking a meal. So then Durvāsā Muni, by his mystic power, he sensed that, right? You could kind of tell when somebody's fasting. There's a certain look to them, their face and their body, maybe a certain mood. Sometimes the devotees get a little angry on the fasting days, right? Of course, Durvāsā Muni, or Ambarīṣa Mahārāja is not like that, but you could tell when somebody's fasting. Like Prabhupada said, the face is the index to the mind. Quoting whoever, I'm not sure where that came from. Maybe we could look it up. Who came up with this? The face is index to the mind, but as they say, who are they? We're not sure. But Prabhupada does quote it in a purport. Face is index to the mind. So you could tell, so somehow or other, whether he could tell by looking at him that he drank water, by his mystic power, I think, he knew. And he became very angry. You broke your fast before feeding us. Now I'm going to kill you, practically speaking. So he had his matted hair. So he grabbed a piece of his hair and he threw it on the ground. And then from that, a demoness came and was going to kill Ambarīṣa Mahārāja, because this demoness was created by Durvāsā Muni for that particular purpose. So then Ambarīṣa Mahārāja, he's just meditating on Krishna. He folds his palms and he's meditating on Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Not afraid at all. Right? Not running, not hiding, not just meditating on Krishna. Meaning that whatever Krishna wants, if Krishna wants to kill me, then he could kill me. And if he wants to protect me, then he could protect me. So, so he was there, and then Sudarshan Chakra comes and annihilates this demoness. Means this chakra, Sudarshan Chakra, coming from Lord Viṣṇu. And then, right after annihilating this demoness, who's next in line? Durvāsā Muni. Because he offended Ambarīṣa Mahārāja. So then Durvāsā Muni starts running. He's scared. Although he's a powerful yogi, mystic, he's completely terrified. And in many ways, rightly so, because Sudarshan Chakra, I mean, you can't, once Sudarshan Chakra comes to get you, that's it. There's no getting around it. So, and then he was running. He ran to Shiva and all over, asking people for help. And Shiva said, I can't help you, right? You have to go to Lord Viṣṇu. So, in text 61, describes how Durvāsā Muni, he came to Lord Viṣṇu, and they had a conversation. And Lord Viṣṇu being Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Viṣṇu is also the Godhead, but expansion. So Durvāsā Muni, this is 61, Durvāsā Muni, the great mystic, scorched by the heat of the Sudarshan Chakra, fell at the feet of Narayan. His body trembling, he spoke as follows: O infallible, unlimited Lord, protector of the entire universe, you are the only desirable objective for all devotees. I am a great offender, my Lord. Please give me protection. So he's saying, please give me protection. Well, Sudarshan Chakra is, spinning in the background, ready to... And this is what he continues. O my Lord, O Supreme Controller, without knowledge of your unlimited prowess, I've offended your most dear devotee. Very kindly save me from the reaction of this offense. You can do everything, for even if a person is fit for going to hell, you can deliver him simply by awakening within his heart the holy name of your Lordship. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said to the Brahman, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Aham Bhakta Paradino Yas Vantantra Ivadvija Sadarbir Grasta Hidayo Bhaktar Bhakta Janat Priyaha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said to the Brahman, I am completely under the control of my devotees. Indeed, I am not at all independent. Because my devotees are completely devoid of material desires, I sit only within the core of their hearts. What to speak of my devotee? Even those who are devotees of my devotee are very dear to me. So it says my devotees are most dear to me. But even those who are devotees of my devotee are very dear. So in other words, it could give us some hope that if we're a devotee of a devotee, then we're also dear. O best of the Brahmins, without saintly persons for whom I am the only destination, I do not desire to enjoy my transcendental bliss and my supreme opulences. Since pure devotees give up their homes, wives, children, relatives, riches, and even their lives simply to serve me, without any desire for material improvement in this life or the next, or in the next, how can I give up such devotees at any time? As chaste women bring their gentle husbands under control by service, the pure devotees who are equal to everyone and completely attached to me in the core of the heart bring me under their full control. My devotees who are always satisfied to be engaged in my loving service are not interested even in the four principles of liberation, Salokya, Sarupya, Samipya, and Sarshti. Although these are automatically achieved by their service, what then is to be said of such perishable happiness as elevation to the higher planetary systems? The pure devotee is always within the core of my heart, and I am always in the heart of my pure devotee. My devotees do not know anything else but me, and I do not know anyone else but them. And then he says what you should do. O Brahman, let me now advise you for your protection. Please hear from me. By offending Mahārāja Ambarīṣa, you have acted with self-envy. Therefore you should go to him immediately, without a moment's delay. One so-called prowess, when employed against the devotee, certainly harms he who employs it. Thus it is the subject, not the object, who is harmed. For a Brahman, austerity and learning are certainly auspicious, but when acquired by a person who is not gentle, such austerity and learning are most dangerous. O best of the Brahmins, you should therefore go immediately to King Ambarīṣa, the son of Mahārāja Ambarīṣa. I wish you all good fortune. If you can satisfy Mahārāja Ambarīṣa, then there will be peace for you. So, Durvāsā Muni, Mahārāja Ambarīṣa drank some water. How is that a offense, big or small at all? It's not an offense at all. And this teaches us, we could learn from this, that if we're not relishing the happiness of Krishna consciousness, then we will, by default, make a big deal out of something that's not a big deal. In other words, we'll be offended easily, very easily, and by other devotees, because to be a devotee means to be around other devotees. The International Society for Krishna Consciousness. We can't get away from devotees. I mean, we can, but it's not advised. So in other words, we have to live with each other, work with each other as a team. But if we're not experiencing the happiness of Krishna consciousness due to not applying ourselves properly, or due to applying ourselves improperly, so there's not applying ourselves, and then there's applying ourselves improperly, or as Rupa Goswami says, what's the one? Atyahara priyasascha prajalpa niyamagraha janasanga chalalyam cha shadbir bhakti vanashati. Atyahara priyasascha prajalpa niyamagraha, right? So, to follow the principles of Krishna consciousness mechanically or without heart, that is an equation for not experiencing the happiness of Krishna consciousness. And to neglect the rules and regulations or the principles of Krishna consciousness, that's also a recipe for not experiencing the happiness of Krishna consciousness, right? And by not experiencing the happiness of Krishna consciousness, but we should note that we're still engaging in some of the austerities, because it's not that we're just, I mean, even to mechanically follow the process of devotional service or without heart, or to be in the association of devotees and neglect some of the principles of Krishna consciousness, still we're with devotees. Still we are practicing some austerity. It means waking up early, doing certain things. There is some austerity there. So austerity without Krishna consciousness or without the bliss of Krishna consciousness, it just makes the heart hard. In other words, we could become mean-spirited, or we could become, as it's being mentioned here, we could become easily offended, like Durvāsā Muni. Durvāsā Muni, although he's a great mystic, was not experiencing the bliss of Krishna consciousness. If he was, then he wouldn't get offended so easily. But he was practicing a lot of austerities. Austerities that we can't even think about doing. But those austerities made his heart hard, and he became easily offended. So we could engage in austerities, we should, right? Tapo divyam, divine austerity, but we have to be careful that we're applying ourselves properly, and therefore able to relish the happiness of Krishna consciousness, and therefore be less likely to become offended, and therefore offend devotees. So that's one thing we could learn from Durvāsā Muni. And you see, on the other hand, Ambarīṣa Mahārāja was so humble and tolerant, and he just wasn't offended. Even Durvāsā Muni tried to kill him. I mean, like if someone tries to kill you, I mean it's really offensive, you know. Someone tries to kill you. I mean, this gets people put in prison, gets people, of course, kicked out of movements, and they talk about them for the next 50, 100, 200 years, you know, the dark history of religion and so on, right? But Ambarīṣa Mahārāja, he was just he was a pure devotee, and he wasn't offended at all. And it said after Durvāsā Muni came back, he bowed down to Ambarīṣa Mahārāja, and Ambarīṣa Mahārāja was very meek and humble. And it said here that he felt shy and ashamed because Durvāsā Muni had fallen at his feet. He wasn't like, all right, you tried to kill me, now you're bowing down, and now I'm feeling a lot of pleasure and satisfaction, and, you know, you should be bowing down because you're wrong. But he actually felt shy and meek and humble and ashamed that Durvāsā Muni was bowing down to him. I mean, and then And then what happened is, it says that after this incident, Mahārāja Ambarīṣa gave Durvāsā Muni sumptuous food to eat. So that was the whole thing. Durvāsā Muni would come with his associates, and then this whole thing happened, right? Where he tried to kill Ambarīṣa Mahārāja, and then this demoness came, and the Sudarshan Chakra killed this demoness, and then after that, Durvāsā Muni was running all over the universe. From the Sudarshan Chakra went to Viṣṇu, then he came back down, and he fell at Ambarīṣa Mahārāja's feet. And then Ambarīṣa Mahārāja, he said, "All right, you ready for lunch?" Yeah, he said he fasted the whole time, waiting. And he said, "You're ready for lunch." I mean, of course, he didn't say it exactly, but paraphrase. And he served him, prasadam. Ambarīṣa Mahārāja gave Durvāsā Muni sumptuous food to eat. And then the king, who had been standing in the same place for 1 year without eating anything, also took prasad. He took prasad after him. So yeah, it's amazing pastime in which Ambarīṣa Mahārāja is displaying the greatness of a pure devotee. But yeah, we should be careful. Excuse me. We should be careful not to offend the devotees, because it's like praying to Krishna, "Please save me, please save me," while drinking poison. You know, it's a silly thing. It doesn't make sense. Or as what is it? Yeah, it's just not a recommended activity. It's considered to be poisonous, you know, offending the devotees. So we could be careful. There's a very I wanted to bring it up, and maybe I can, just because it's really good, or maybe I could just save it for later, because we are running out of time. Let's see here. Yeah, I mean, I think to give it absolute justice, what I wanted to bring up further in the 9th canto, I think we just save it for next time. But anyways, huh? Too late? All right, well, I'll bring it up now, and then in the future we could also discuss. But this is in the 9th canto, chapter 6, the downfall of Sabara Muni. Let's see here. So it describes how Sabara Muni, he was a great mystic yogi, and he was meditating in the river Yamuna. And he saw 2 fish engaged in sexual affairs, copulating. And then he became agitated, sexually agitated. And then he came out of the river, and he requested a king, "Oh, Brahman, any of my..." He asked this king, "Please let me marry your daughters, any of your daughters." In response to this request, the king said, "Oh, Brahman, any of my daughters may accept any husband according to their personal selection." So then Sabara Muni, I mean, he was in the water for a long time, so his hair, gray hair, and skin is slack, and, you know, he just wasn't looking so good, you know, like if you spend a lot of time in the water, you know, you're become a little wrinkle. So he wasn't looking so good. So then, by his mystic power, he made himself into a handsome young man. Because the women were saying, "Oh, you know, we don't want anything to do with him." So he became a handsome young man. And then it said that he married 50 princesses. They were actually very happy to marry him. So it said he enjoyed with these numerous wives. But then over time he was thinking, I'm bringing this up because I know we brought this up many times this pastime, but a lot of the times when we bring this particular pastime up, somehow or other, the end of what happens to him isn't brought up. So I thought I'd bring it up. So this is text 48. In this way, Sarbara Muni enjoyed sense gratification in the material world, but he was not at all satisfied. Just as a fire never ceases blazing if constantly supplied with drops of fat. Thereafter, one day, while Sarbara Muni who was expert in chanting mantras, was sitting in a secluded place, he thought to himself about the cause of his fall down. So he was sitting there thinking, because he was a mystic yogi in the river Yamuna, and then jumped out, and there's 50 princesses he married, princesses he married them all. And then he was enjoying sense gratification, enjoying his life, right, material enjoyment. And then he's thinking, what happened? What was the cause of my fall down? Which was simply that he had associated himself with the sexual affairs of the fish. So short purport. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur remarks that Sarbara Muni had fallen from his austerity because of a Vaishnava aparad. The history is that when Garuda wanted to eat fish, Sarbara Muni unnecessarily gave the fish shelter under his care. Because Garuda's plans for eating were disappointed, Sarbara Muni certainly committed a great offense to a Vaishnava. Because of this Vaishnava aparad and offense at the lotus feet of a Vaishnava, Sarbara Muni fell from his exalted position of a mystic tapasya. So then it continues. So he's thinking, what was the cause? And then he's thinking about it. And then he starts lamenting. But his lamentation is, he starts becoming more Krishna conscious. He says one should, and he starts glorifying Krishna. And then it says that when Sarbara Muni who was quite conversant with the self, went to the forest, so he went to the forest. He actually left. In this way, he passed his life in household affairs for some time, but then he became detached from material enjoyment. It's amazing. After all that. To renounce material association, he accepted the Vanaprastha order and went to the forest. His devoted wives followed him, for they had no shelter other than their husband. And there's 2 more verses I'll read. When Sarbara Muni, who was quite conversant with the self, went to the forest, he performed severe austerities, penances. In this way, in the fire at the time of death, he ultimately engaged himself in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then in the purport, Prabhupada mentions that Takta Deham Punarjanma Naitimamadi Sorjun. He goes back to God to those who engage in penances and austerities. He says, thus it appears that Sarbara Muni attained this perfect stage. O Maharaj Pariksha, by observing their husband progressing in spiritual existence, Sarbara Muni's wives were also able to enter the spiritual world by his spiritual power, just as the flames of a fire cease when the fire is extinguished. So the wives also went to the spiritual world. So he had all that dramatic fall down. And then at the end, he lamented, and he went to the forest. He attained perfection, and his wives, the ones who also. So it's a happy ending. Vaishnava aparad, of course, if he didn't have to do all that, then that would have been good. But still, it's happy ending. So that's. Sometimes devotees, we see that they go through some things. They have to go through some difficulties, and then hopefully, right, they turn back around and they're going the straight and narrow path, and then they attain perfection. So But yeah, we should be careful not to offend. Okay, does anybody have any questions?
Balaram Prabhu?
I think Tyler has one, and then we could take yours.
Yes, I can wait. No problem.
Thank you. That was a wonderful class. I had a couple quick reflections and then a question.
Okay.
One was, it's to the benefit of those wives that he put on that young, handsome form, because they rejected him, and they're ultimately rejecting their chance to go back to the spiritual world, just by rejecting him on his physical form. So by his mercy, in a sense, he takes that beautiful form. Also, I didn't know that the relapse into the material world was because of a great offense. The trigger was the fish. When I heard the story, I thought, why would he just see the fish and fall so hard? But he had already...
Yeah, he already offended. Yeah. Because ordinarily, that wouldn't have been a problem for him at all. Yeah, he was there. He was there for how many? 100? Or a long time. He was there for a long time. But because he committed that Vaishnava Aparad, then, he became disturbed.
It's funny. I was walking with my buddy one time, and something bad had happened, I think we had done, and then immediately, he got hit in the head with a branch, and he was like, oh, instant karma, right? That idea of, your karma is immediate. So that's interesting that, you can do something so bad, and it just sits there waiting. This little thing that's kind of mundane will come up and catch you.
See, one thing I'll just say real quick. One devotee, one brahmachari, he went to India, to Vrindavan. It's not exactly India, but he went to Vrindavan. And he went to take darshan, because it's a common thing. You visit the different temples and take darshan of the deities, and you offer obeisances and so on. So one pujari there at a particular temple gave him charnamrita, bathe the deities, most holy, right, for him to, sip. So then this devotee, he got it, the charnamrita in his hand. He went like this, and he threw it on the ground. And I asked him, why'd you do that? And he said, well, I thought it was water to purify my hand. So, because a lot of the times in those temples, for whatever reasons, a lot of the times they just have water, just without any yogurt and things. But anyways, he did that. And the pujari was just, and he was a brahmachari, means he was dressed like this. So the pujari was just really disgusted with him. What is this person, So anyways, right after that, he left. And some time was the same day, very close, the same day. I don't know if he was walking out of a temple or something like that, but he hit his head really hard. Bam! Hit his head, and it was like a whole, So it was instant, mercy. Anyway, so.
One reflection, then the question was, you talking about how the example you gave was in the ashram, right? We not be perfect in our practice yet, but at least we're in the association of devotees and we're waking up early. We might not have it all together, but the process is happening because we're here, even if mechanical. An analogy Sadhu Sangha Dasa gave me a while ago, it's very basic, but it's kind of the same principle where if someone's very dirty, they need to become clean. So if they're really dirty, they go to the shower to get clean. It takes a while in the shower to get clean, but at least they're in the shower.
Yeah.
So that's the idea.
Yeah, at least they're in the shower.
And then the question is, Durvāsā, from the story, I like that you were talking about he was easily offended because he's doing all these austerities, but he's not experiencing taste. Right?
Yes.
He's doing tapasya, but he doesn't have ruchi yet. So is that explained why at all? Why he was doing all these austerities, why he had all this power, but he wasn't experiencing taste from it?
Well, because he wasn't a devotee. He was a mystic yogi. So they're whether they want to merge into the existence of Krishna or whether they just want to develop some mystic powers like anima, lagima, prapti, right, kamya, whatever, and all these different. Okay. So they're just engaged in all these austerities.
Not bhakti.
Yeah, not bhakti. And therefore sometimes, they have a hard time, controlling their anger and so on. Whereas if somebody is experiencing the bliss of Krishna conscious or just Krishna conscious, then they can control these things. The others have a hard time. And that's also a lesson for us because you have Sharbhara Muni, he is mystic yogi. You have Durvāsā Muni. You have Vishamrita, right? These are powerful mystics. They're not some guy named Joe and PB or something, going to the pub. I mean, even they're not some, whatever, you think about some qualified persons in this world. I mean, these are powerful mystic yogis, unimaginable. But still, they all had their issues and their fall downs based on, different things. But, so, it's a lesson. But the devotees, they could control. Yes, Govardhan Das.
Thank you, Balaram. Sometimes the devotees, they get caught in a crossfire, meaning they're in between two devotees and they're having their nice debate.
Yeah.
So, what would you recommend in that? And if they're superior to your
okay. Yeah. Thanks. They say that you should never get in between two Brahmins, a wife and a husband, and I forgot the other one. But devotee and another devotee. So in many ways, if somebody's having their issues, I remember there's been so many times where devotees are having so it depends. But sometimes just to walk away or just to, it's not our business type of thing is a good policy. Or I asked my spiritual master one time because I remember I was in a meeting. I was in a meeting and good old meetings, right? About temple and devotees and this and that, right? What else was I in a meeting about? But I was in a meeting, and then two devotees were speaking, and then I spoke up. I said something, and then it kind of went into this whole chain reaction of what that devotee said to me, and then what he said, and it was like this whole kind of like snowball thing. And then I was kind of, my mind, or maybe my false ego or something, was a little pricked, and then it was a whole, I don't want to say, pastime that unfolded. And at that point, I didn't say anything further. Just in my mind, internally, I was struggling. So I went to my spiritual master, and not immediately, but when I saw him, and I spoke to him about it. And he said, it's an art, speaking. And he said, sometimes it's an art when to speak and when not to speak. And then I reflected on it, and I said, I actually didn't need to say anything. It was just between them two, and I could have just, observed it, and they could have worked it out, and then we move on to the next topic. And that was it. But I said something, and it wasn't necessary. So he said, it's an art to learn when to speak and when not to speak. So that's there. I remember Tirthamaj said that one time, two devotees, I think it was Archita Prabhu and Sura, so we can mention it because, Sura, he left. But anyways, I think it was them too, whether it was someone else, whatever. But, devotees, they have emotions. We're not, machines or something, but devotees get upset about things. So I'm sure it was about some Krishna conscious service or something like that, but it was really intense. Like they were going back and forth. And Tirthamaj was saying, he was just like looking at it like, wow, this is the most intense, I've ever seen before, two people. He said he was impressed. The absorption, So, sometimes devotees, they have their disagreements and they're working it out. So sometimes it's good we just step aside. Now, if things are like escalating and they're about to have a, wrestling match or something, then maybe we need to get involved. But depending on the circumstances, we may not have to get involved. So, Tamal Krishna Goswami one time said in a class, he said that the benefit of associating with devotees is that devotees who have been around means a particular devotee associated with another person who's been around for years. The person who's been around through years has been through many experiences and difficulties. and that person could explain those difficulties and those circumstances to somebody maybe who hasn't been around as long, and then that means that person doesn't have to go through those necessarily. They could just learn from hearing. So that's the benefit. Anyways, okay, Dimitri.
Yeah, thank you, Balaram. Could
Sirabov, what is it? Sirabov?
Sibiro.
Sirabov. Okay.
Sibiro.
Okay.
So, could you tell me what does the Vaishnava pride mean? Because
Pride?
Sometimes you have kind of like miscommunication with devotees, and unintentionally can make somebody upset, and it's all very central, like that. So would that be considered the Vaishnava pride in that regard?
I mean, one time Srila Prabhupada was asked, "Oh, Prabhupada, I'm committing Vaishnava aparad, offenses to devotees all the time." He said, "If I had to bow down every time I'm committing offenses, I'd be bowing down all day and night. So what do I do about that?" And he said that, well, in the morning, we all offer Vaishnava pranam to each other. And he said that whatever was performed the day before, or, whatever's going on, we could take that as a time to, bow down to the devotees and to remember, who they are and to ask for forgiveness. And also, it's important that we don't get absorbed in all this kind of like, "Hey, Prabhu, you moved my soap container. It was here and you moved it there. Hey, don't touch my soap container," Or, "Hey, you always leaving the door open. What's wrong with you? You're born in a barn," like some type of animal or something, like there's a whole fight over a door or something, being open. Or it's like, "Hey, you used my mat, don't use my," whatever. There's so many things. But there's more, you could say, gentlemanly way of going about things. I remember one time I was upstairs and I told some new brahmachari, said, because he had stuff on the floor. As a general principle, we shouldn't have stuff on the floor as far as possible. It means all over the temple, all over the ashram, because it's hard. You can't. It means there's something on the floor you can't sweep or mop. So it's best if it's just always off the floor. Sweeping and mopping, it's cleaner. Anyway, so I mentioned to this brahmachari, because he had a bunch of stuff under his bed. We used to have bunk beds. So I said, "Hey, Prabhu, you should, move that stuff." And he got all like, "Move the stuff? So what do you mean?" And I said something like, "Oh, well, it says in the book, Brahmachari handbook." He said, "Brahmachari," he said, "What book, What book? I don't care about that book." That's what he said. And he kept the stuff there, actually. Yeah, he's no longer with us, but he's still a devotee. He had some difficulty, but he's still a devotee, and he became better over time while in the ashram. But so we shouldn't get absorbed in these things. The reason being is because there's way more important things to think about and to do. If we're just like back in the ashram, fighting with each other, or there's some tension with each other or something, that's a waste of energy, because we're supposed to be using our energy for giving people Krishna consciousness, for spreading Krishna consciousness as the first and foremost duty and mission. And if we're just, have all these problems with each other, we're all right, hey, let's have a 2-hour meeting about how we're not getting along, and let's just try to work it out. It's like, okay, we could do that, but best is if devotees mature and we don't have to have a 2-hour meeting. I've been in so many meetings about, devotee conflicts. And ultimately, okay, it's not a waste of time in the sense that we're trying to help devotees, but it's like better if we didn't have to have this meeting, And I actually told one devotee that, because he was having problems with another brahmachari, and they called me for another meeting, and I said, "Okay, we could keep on having these meetings, but to tell the truth, we have to I can't just sit in these meetings all the time. You two have to learn how to work with each other." So if we could mature through prayer, through sadhana, through so many things, right, then we don't have to waste our time like this. Also, devotees, sitting around on social media, fighting about to be vegan, to not be vegan, to whatever. There's a million things they're fighting about. And then the whole world's going to hell, and devotees are just sitting back, fighting with each other on Facebook or in their ashrams or in their houses or wherever they are. So it's a waste of time. So, of course, there's a little bit drawn out answer to your question, but we should be careful not to offend devotees. We do have emotions. We do have feelings. I mean, so we should keep that in consideration. I mean, we're all coming from different backgrounds and cultures and so on. So, but we shouldn't take these things so seriously. I mean, like 2 weeks ago, maybe somebody offended us by doing something. And then do we really remember it? You know, what are the details of that? Maybe, but a lot of times not. So better just to... Does that... Okay. All right, one last. Vijay?
May I?
Yes.
Yes, Balaram Prabhu, Dandavat Pranams. My question is, in the context of today's text, what is the meaning of the saying, quote, pride comes before a fall, unquote?
Well, first comes love, then comes marriage, right? Then comes that song, Baby in a Baby Carriage. So there's a progression of things. First comes contemplation of the senses, right? And they're thinking, hey, doesn't sound so bad. Maybe I'll do that, right? And then we start thinking about it more and more. Yeah, you know, that's a good. And then, you know, then we go off, run off into something. So there's progression. Things progress. There's natural progressions of things, right? Like diabetes or something. I mean, people, they get diabetes. There's a progression, right? Lots of sugar, not a lot of exercise, generally speaking. Of course, it could be from other reasons. And then they get diabetes. So similarly, there's a progression with fall down. Of course, there's many ways to fall down, not just pride. There's been many humble devotees who also fell down. Means they're very humble. I know many humble devotees, actually, but they have a problem with their controlling their senses and mind, you know. Means they don't offend anybody, but they just have a problem controlling their senses and mind. Just like Bhaktivedanta Swami said one time about devotees falling down in India. It means falling down from Krishna consciousness in India. He said, in America and Europe, when they fall down, they like really fall down. They like, you know, go really deep, you know, into Maya, sinful activity. And like a fall down in India, I don't know, they start watching cricket and, you know, drinking Coke or something, or, you know. But yeah, there's progression. There's many ways to fall down. And one of the ways is pride. Means we become, prideth cometh before a falleth, right? Joking. So by pride, it's a progression because we become proud and we just start offending everybody and, hey, I'm God practically, I'm invincible, and you guys are all mixed devotees at best. Some of you are probably non-devotees at heart. I know that for a fact, actually. And therefore you should all serve me, and if you get in the way of my sense gratification, I mean my service, then you know, you're definitely demonic at that point. Anyways, and we offend them by our words, by our thoughts, by our activities. We just become offensive and proud. And then we fall, because the idea is that if we remain proud and offending in the association of devotees over and over and over again, then actually we're just digging ourselves a hole, deeper, 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 deeper hole, which it means it's harder to get out of. So Krishna says, all right, buddy, you're being offensive. We're kicking you out of the association of devotees, and you could be offensive solo, and then that's actually better than being in the association of devotees and committing offenses. So anyways, I hope that...
Balaram Prabhu, if I may, so in accordance with your answer, being removed from the association with devotees is equivalent to falling down?
I mean, you could be removed from the association of devotees and still be a devotee means under circumstances, means there might be certain circumstances where you're not surrounded by devotees. You can still be a devotee. But a lot of the times when someone becomes proud, Krishna removes them from the association of devotees so they do not commit further offenses. Yeah.
Yes, Prabhu, thank you very much. As usual, right to the point answer to my question. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Jai, Hare Krishna. Grantrad Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Yeah, also, Dimitri, like, communication's important, you know. Sometimes men in general, also young men in general, they have a tendency not to communicate. Means if there's some issues, some problems, sometimes we just have to communicate. And it may not have to be some big meeting or something. We could just be driving with other devotee, or we could be, you know, walking with other devotee, whatever. Just say, hey, Prabhu, you know, like, I just want to mention this to you, and, you know, hey, let's, you know, talk about this a little bit, because it's kind of bothering me, to be honest, you know. Or I don't see how this is working so much, you know. You keep on doing this, or hey, maybe it's just my problem, I don't know, but let's talk about it. That's important too, because we can't just bottle things up. Because we bottle things up, like if somebody's bothering us or some issues are going on or whatever, if we bottle it up, then it just turns into anger and frustration, and it escalates, and it's like bottled up, you know, just like when you got like a soda pop or something, you know, non-caffeinated, but it's like it's bottled up, right? Now if you shake it up, right, and then you take the cap off, and it's gonna, you know, like apple cider or something like that, so it bottles up, and then at one point it escalates, and then we would just snap on a devotee. You say, you know what, I'm sick of you doing that, you know, that's the last time, you know. And the devotee's like, what? What are you talking about? You know, I'm sick of you. And then it becomes like a whole shouting match, you know. It's like, all right, Prabhu, well, maybe you should have told me, you know, the first time instead of the 200th time I did it, so we could have worked this out before, you know. So speaking sometimes is good. I actually, years ago, and I'm working on it, I think I'm getting better, but I had a tendency to bottle things up, and it created a lot of problems. So that's also good.
I guess it's a good thing, because from my experience growing up in Russia, it's like a big tendency to kind of like not be very expressive.
Yes.
And just kind of battle things up and be, you know, dealing with the problems on the internal.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess it's a good thing to communicate.
Yeah.
And if you upset somebody slightly, you can always mention that.
Yeah.
You know, in a nice way.
Yeah, you could also
overcome.
Communicate with them too.
Yeah.
Hey, Prabhu, it seemed, I hope I didn't offend you, or it seemed maybe I offended you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. You know, like communication.
Yeah.
And you may need to communicate less with somebody who's really close to you, because you kind of understand each other. But especially with people who aren't close to you, because they don't understand you as much, and you don't understand them as much, maybe more communication is necessary.
But what, following this, because I remember one time when I was distributing books, I on accident, I offended a person, because I was saying, I had like Bhagavad Gita, and it was a young lady, and I said, oh, here, this might be a little easier for you to understand. And I pointed out at, you know, the other book, the smaller book. And she's like, what do you mean easier? Do you think I'm stupid? And she walked away. And, you know.
Yeah, like a lot of people, they have, you'd call like self-worth issues. Means they don't feel themselves worthy or intelligent, or, you know, they have self-esteem problems. So people become very sensitive, you know, like hypersensitive. And if you say something that's even like hinting or even like, you know, at their self-worth or lack of, then they become offended, you know. Also people's false egos there too, so there's a combination going on. But But yeah, that's why, we have to be careful not to say things that may unnecessarily ruffle somebody's feathers.
Yeah.
But there is a saying that you distress, what is the saying? You distress the comfortable. Means if someone's very comfortable, you give them a little distress. Means kind of wake them up a little bit. And then they say that if somebody is distressed, then you comfort them. So, like both, you kind of, if the person needs a little, or maybe they just need a little bit more kind of, they're distressed people, they need a little bit more soft kind of approach. So it's a whole art. I made so many mistakes on book distribution, like maybe I'll tell you off mic, but of going up to somebody and, saying something, which it was just naive and innocent, but they get really offended,
And that also happened to me many times.
Yeah, so there's certain, we have to be careful. All right, Jada. Good to Srimad Bhagavatam.